The courtroom was tense, the air thick with the weight of a trial that had gripped the entire town. On one side, a prosecutor laid out a damning case against Nathan Hayes, a man accused of the unthinkable, the murder of Alyssa Green. On the other side, a weary defense attorney fought against insurmountable odds. The evidence was stacked high, the witnesses confident in their claims. A guilty verdict seemed inevitable. But then, a boy's voice cut through the monotony, shattering the courtroom's rhythm. "Stop the trial. I have something to say." All eyes turned to Liam Carter, a 12-year-old with messy blonde hair and a look of fierce determination. His interruption wasn't just unexpected, it was unthinkable. What could a child possibly know about such a serious case? Yet, as Liam began to speak, it became clear that he wasn't just another spectator. He had seen something no one else had noticed, and his revelation would unravel secrets that had been buried for far too long. What Liam didn't know was that by stepping forward, he was placing himself in the path of danger. His claim that Nathan Hayes was innocent and that Alyssa's true killer was still out there sent shockwaves through the trial, but it also made him a target. As he pieced together fragments of the truth, Liam uncovered a web of lies, corruption, and violence that extended far beyond Alyssa's murder. Who was the scarred man Liam had seen arguing with a woman in the park on the day of Alyssa's disappearance? What dark secrets was Kyle Becker, the town's charming but enigmatic businessman, desperately trying to keep hidden? And how far would someone go to silence a boy who refused to back down? As Liam navigated threats, betrayals, and startling discoveries, he learned that justice isn't always black and white. With the help of a brave police officer, a frightened but determined witness, and his own unwavering courage, Liam would uncover the truth. But the closer he got, the more dangerous the game became. This is the story of how one boy's voice, small but unwavering, shook an entire town and fought to bring justice to those who needed it most. But the question remains, will Liam's courage be enough to survive what comes next? The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension. Spectators leaned forward in their seats, reporters scribbled notes, and lawyers shuffled through stacks of paper on their desks. On the witness stand sat Nathan Hayes, a weary-looking man in his mid-30s. His hollow cheeks and tired eyes gave him the appearance of someone who had given up hope long before this day. The prosecutor paced the floor, her voice sharp and commanding. "Mr. Hayes, you were seen arguing with Alyssa Green on the night of her disappearance. Witnesses heard shouting, and the evidence places you at the scene where her body was found. Do you deny any of this?" Nathan cleared his throat, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't hurt her. I loved Alyssa. I would never." "Stop the trial." The voice cut through the courtroom like a blade, high-pitched and unwavering. Heads turned in unison toward the source. A boy no older than 12, standing in the aisle with wide eyes and a determined expression. His blonde hair was messy, and his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Bailiff!" Judge Sylvia Gray, a stern woman with silver-rimmed glasses, slammed her gavel down. "Remove that child from the courtroom immediately." The bailiff hesitated, caught off guard by the boy's sudden outburst. The boy took a deep breath, his voice trembling but resolute. "You can't throw me out. I know something that can prove Nathan Hayes is innocent." The courtroom erupted in chaos. Gasps, whispers, and murmurs filled the room as the judge pounded her gavel again, her voice rising above the noise. "Order. I will have order in my courtroom." She turned her piercing gaze to the boy. "Who are you? And what do you think you're doing interrupting these proceedings?" The boy stepped forward, his sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. "My name is Liam Carter," he said. "I was at the park the day Alyssa disappeared, and I saw something that no one else knows about." The defense attorney, a middle-aged man named Peter Rourke, straightened in his chair, his curiosity piqued. The prosecutor, on the other hand, looked skeptical. Judge Gray raised an eyebrow. "This is highly irregular. Liam Carter, do you realize the seriousness of this case? A man's life is on the line, and you're not even old enough to be in this courtroom without a guardian." Liam swallowed hard but didn't back down. "I know what I saw. Please, just listen to me." The judge studied him for a long moment, suspicion and curiosity warring in her gaze. Finally, She motioned to the bailiff. Take him to my chambers. We'll continue this conversation in private. Everyone else, remain seated. This trial is not over. As Liam was led out of the courtroom, he glanced back at Nathan Hayes. Their eyes met briefly, and Liam saw a flicker of hope in the man's otherwise defeated expression. The heavy doors closed behind Liam with a thud, leaving the courtroom buzzing with unanswered questions. In Judge Gray's chambers, the atmosphere was no less tense. The room was imposing, with towering bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes and a massive oak desk that dwarfed Liam as he sat in a chair facing the judge. Now, Judge Gray said, folding her hands on the desk, explain yourself. What could a child like you possibly know about a murder trial? Liam fidgeted, his palms sweaty. I was at the park the day Alyssa Green disappeared. I saw a man and a woman arguing near the lake. The man looked like Nathan Hayes, but it wasn't him. The judge frowned. That's a bold claim. Do you have any proof? Liam hesitated, then shook his head. No, but I remember the man's face. He had a scar on his cheek, and he was wearing a jacket with a weird symbol on it, like a circle with lines coming out of it. He forced the woman into a car and drove off. The judge leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. And why are you only coming forward now? I told my mom, Liam said, his voice trembling, but she didn't believe me. She said it was just a couple having a fight. But when I saw Nathan's face on the news, I knew I had to say something. He's not the guy I saw that day. Judge Gray tapped her fingers on the desk, deep in thought. This is troubling. If what you're saying is true, it could cast doubt on the prosecution's case. But without evidence, your testimony alone isn't enough to overturn the evidence we've seen so far. I'm not lying, Liam said, his voice firm despite his fear. Nathan didn't do it. The judge studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. I'll inform the attorneys about your claims. But be warned, Liam, this is a serious matter. If you're lying, there will be consequences. I'm not lying, Liam repeated. Back in the courtroom, Nathan Hayes sat at the defense table, staring at his hands. He had no idea what the boy had told the judge, but the interruption had left him shaken. For months, Nathan had been drowning in hopelessness. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Fingerprints, eyewitness accounts, and even a lack of an alibi. Everyone seemed convinced of his guilt, even his own lawyer. But that boy, Liam, he had spoken with such conviction, as if he truly believed Nathan was innocent. For the first time in months, Nathan felt a glimmer of hope. The courtroom doors opened, and Judge Gray returned to the bench. She adjusted her glasses, her expression calm but serious. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, we've had an unexpected development. I've spoken with a new witness who claims to have information relevant to this case. I will be meeting with counsel from both sides in chambers to discuss the matter further. This trial is adjourned until tomorrow morning. The gavel came down, and the courtroom erupted into noise once again. Reporters scrambled to get statements, spectators whispered furiously, and Nathan sat frozen in his seat, his mind racing. Was this his chance at freedom, or just another cruel twist in an already unbearable nightmare? That evening, Liam sat at the dinner table with his mom, Jessica, poking at his spaghetti with a fork. Jessica, a kind but overworked single mother, watched him carefully. You've been quiet, she said. Did something happen at the courthouse today? Liam hesitated. I saw something during the trial, he said vaguely. Something that made me think. Jessica frowned. You didn't cause any trouble, did you? No, ma'am, Liam lied. I just listened. Jessica sighed, seeming to accept his answer. All right, but you stay out of it, Liam. This is grown-up business. It's not for kids. Liam nodded, but his mind was already elsewhere. He had done what he could for now, but he knew the hardest part was yet to come. He had told the judge his truth, but would anyone believe him? And if they did, what would that mean for Nathan? And for the real killer? The events of the trial played over and over in Liam's head that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to shake the judge's stern warning. If you're lying, there will be consequences. But Liam wasn't lying. He knew what he saw. The scar on the man's cheek, the strange emblem on the jacket, the woman being forced into the car. It was all seared into his memory. But what if no one believed him? What if Nathan Hayes went to prison for something he didn't do? Liam rolled over and stared at the notebook on his desk. He'd started jotting down everything he could remember about that day in the park, hoping it would help him piece things together. But the more he thought about it, the more questions he had. Why was the man so desperate to hide his identity? And what was the strange symbol on his jacket? Liam's thoughts drifted to his mom. Jessica had always worked hard to take care of him, but she didn't believe him about what he'd seen. It was probably just a couple having a fight, she'd said, brushing it off like it was nothing. But Liam knew better. The next morning, Liam sat at the kitchen table, picking at his cereal while Jessica hurried around the house, getting ready for work. "You okay, kiddo?" she asked, pausing to ruffle his hair. "I guess," Liam mumbled. Jessica knelt down beside him, her expression softening. "Look, I know you want to help, but this is a serious case. You shouldn't get involved. It's not safe." "I just want to do the right thing," Liam said, looking down at his bowl. Jessica sighed. "Sometimes, the right thing is letting the adults handle it. Promise me you'll stay out of trouble today." Liam nodded, but deep down, he wasn't sure he could keep that promise. At school, Liam struggled to focus. His teachers' voices faded into the background as he replayed the events of the trial in his mind. He could still hear the judge's gavel, still see Nathan Hayes' haunted expression. By lunchtime, Liam had made up his mind. He needed to revisit the park where it all happened. After school, instead of heading straight home, Liam rode his bike to Oak Ridge Park. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the grass. Families were packing up their picnics, and kids were heading home. The park felt quieter than usual, almost eerie. Liam stopped near the lake, where he'd seen the argument months ago. The memory came flooding back. The man grabbing the woman's arm, her panicked expression, the way she struggled against him before he forced her into the car. He walked to the spot where he'd hidden behind a tree that day. The ground was damp, and the faint smell of pine lingered in the air. Liam scanned the area, hoping to find something, anything, that could prove he was telling the truth. At first, there was nothing, just leaves, dirt, and a few scattered candy wrappers. But then something shiny caught his eye. Half buried in the dirt near the path was a small object. Liam crouched down and picked it up, brushing away the mud. It was a keychain shaped like a sunflower. Its petals were scratched and worn, but it looked familiar. Liam's chest tightened. He remembered seeing a photo of Alyssa Green on the news. In the picture, she was holding a coffee cup, and dangling from her purse strap was a sunflower keychain, identical to the one in his hand. This couldn't be a coincidence. Liam raced home, the keychain clutched tightly in his hand. When he got to his room, he opened his laptop and searched for Alyssa's photos online. It didn't take long to find the picture he was looking for. Alyssa smiling at the camera, her purse hanging over her shoulder, and the sunflower keychain clearly visible. Liam's hands shook as he compared the photo to the keychain he'd found. They were exactly the same. He leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. If the keychain belonged to Alyssa, then she had been in the park that day, the same day Liam saw the argument. But if Nathan Hayes was innocent, then who was the man forcing her into the car? Liam's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of his mom's voice calling from downstairs. "Liam, dinner's ready." Liam quickly shoved the keychain into his desk drawer and closed his laptop. "Coming," he shouted. Over dinner, Liam tried to act normal, but Jessica noticed his distracted demeanor. "Everything okay?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah," Liam said quickly, stuffing a bite of spaghetti into his mouth. Jessica narrowed her eyes. "You're not getting involved in that trial again, are you?" "No," Liam lied, avoiding her gaze. Jessica sighed. "Good, because I don't want you getting hurt. Promise me, Liam." "I promise," Liam said, though the words felt heavy on his tongue. That night, Liam couldn't sleep. The keychain sat on his desk, taunting him with unanswered questions. He opened his notebook and began writing down everything he could remember about the day Alyssa disappeared. The argument by the lake, the man with the scar on his cheek, the strange emblem on his jacket, the white truck parked nearby. As Liam stared at the list, something clicked. The emblem. It wasn't just a random symbol, it looked like a logo. Maybe it was connected to a company or an organization. Liam grabbed his laptop and started searching for symbols that matched the one he'd seen. It took hours, but finally, he found something. A local trucking company with a similar logo. The company, Riverstone Freight, had a warehouse just outside town. Liam's pulse quickened. Could the man from the park be connected to this company? He saved the website and closed his laptop. Tomorrow, he would find out. The next day, Liam headed straight to the courthouse after school. He waited outside until the defense attorney, Peter Rourke, emerged. "Mr. Rourke," Liam called, running up to him. The attorney looked surprised. "Liam, what are you doing here?" "I found something," Liam said, pulling the sunflower keychain from his pocket. "This belonged to Alyssa. I found it in the park where I saw the argument." Peter's eyes widened as he examined the keychain. "This is significant. Where exactly did you find it?" "Near the lake," Liam said. "I think she was there the day she disappeared. And I think the man I saw is connected to a trucking company called Riverstone Freight. Their logo matches the emblem I saw on his jacket." Peter frowned. "Liam, this is big. But we need more evidence before we can use it in court. Are you sure about this?" "I'm sure," Liam said firmly. Peter nodded. "Okay, I'll look into it. But you need to be careful, Liam. If what you're saying is true, someone might not want this information to get out." "I'll be careful," Liam promised. But as he walked home, clutching the keychain tightly, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him. Liam lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the sunflower keychain on his desk gleaming faintly in the moonlight. His conversation with Peter Rourke replayed in his mind. If what you're saying is true, someone might not want this information to get out. The words lingered like a warning, and for the first time, Liam felt a flicker of fear. He had uncovered something important, but the more he thought about it, the more he realized just how dangerous the truth might be. The house was quiet. His mom had gone to bed early, exhausted from her shift at the diner. Liam reached over to his nightstand and grabbed his notebook, flipping through the pages filled with his messy handwriting and sketches of the symbol he'd seen on the man's jacket. He tried to piece everything together, but the answers felt just out of reach. Just as his eyelids began to grow heavy, a faint noise made him freeze. It was a rustling sound, followed by the creak of a floorboard. Liam sat up, his heart pounding. He strained his ears, listening for any sign that he had imagined it. But then he heard it again, soft footsteps moving through the house. Someone was inside. Liam's mind raced. Should he wake his mom? Call the police? He reached for his phone, but his hands were trembling so much that it slipped from his grasp and landed on the floor with a soft thud. The footsteps stopped. Liam's breath caught in his throat. He slid off his bed as quietly as possible, crouching low to the floor. The sound of his heartbeat roared in his ears as he crawled toward his desk and grabbed the sunflower keychain, clutching it tightly like a talisman. The footsteps resumed, growing louder as they approached his bedroom door. Liam's door wasn't locked. It never was. He stared at the doorknob, watching as it slowly began to turn. The door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside. The man was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in dark clothes. His face was partially obscured by the shadows, but Liam could make out a faint scar running down his cheek, the same scar he had seen on the man in the park. Liam froze, his mind screaming at him to run, but his body wouldn't obey. The man took a step closer, his voice low and threatening. "Where is it?" Liam blinked. "What?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. "The keychain," the man growled. "I know you found it. Give it to me." Liam's fingers tightened around the keychain in his hand. He didn't know why it was so important to this man, but he wasn't about to hand it over. "I don't know what you're talking about," Liam lied, his voice shaking. The man took another step forward, his shadow looming over Liam. "Don't play games with me, kid. You don't understand what you've gotten yourself into." Before Liam could respond, a sudden sound shattered the tense silence. The creak of a door opening down the hall. "Liam?" Jessica's voice called, groggy and confused. "What's going on?" The man cursed under his breath. Without another word, he turned and bolted out of the room, his heavy footsteps echoing down the hallway. "Mom!" Liam shouted, scrambling to his feet. Jessica appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide with alarm. Liam, what's happening? Are you okay? There's someone in the house, Liam yelled. He just ran downstairs. Jessica didn't hesitate. She grabbed her phone from the nightstand and called 911, her voice steady despite the panic in her eyes. The police arrived within minutes, their flashing red and blue lights illuminating the quiet street. Officer Ramirez, the same detective Liam had spoken to after the trial, was among them. Ramirez surveyed the broken lock on the back door and the muddy footprints leading into the house. Her expression was grim as she turned to Liam and Jessica. "Are you both okay?" she asked. Jessica nodded, holding Liam close. "We're fine, but he could have hurt us if I hadn't woken up." Liam stepped forward, his hands still shaking. "It was the same man I saw in the park. He had a scar on his cheek. He wanted the keychain." Ramirez's brow furrowed. "The sunflower keychain?" Liam nodded, pulling it from his pocket. "I don't know why it's so important, but he knew I had it." Ramirez took the keychain and examined it closely. "This might be more significant than we realized. I'll have it analyzed for fingerprints and any other evidence." "What about the man?" Jessica asked, her voice trembling. "Did you see which way he went?" One of the officers shook his head. "We searched the area, but he's gone. We'll keep an eye out, though." Ramirez placed a reassuring hand on Jessica's shoulder. "We'll do everything we can to keep you both safe. For now, I suggest staying somewhere else tonight." Jessica nodded, her grip on Liam tightening. "Thank you." That night, Jessica and Liam stayed at a nearby hotel. The room was small, with 2 twin beds and a TV mounted on the wall, but it felt safer than home. Jessica sat on the edge of her bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Liam," she said quietly, "I think it's time you told me everything." Liam hesitated, then nodded. He recounted everything. The argument he'd witnessed at the park, the man with the scar, the strange emblem, the sunflower keychain, and the conversation with Peter Rourke. Jessica listened intently, her expression shifting from disbelief to concern as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. "I didn't believe you before," she admitted, her voice heavy with guilt. "But now, I'm scared, Liam. This is bigger than we thought." "I can't stop now, Mom," Liam said, his voice firm. "Nathan Hayes didn't kill Alyssa. I know he didn't. And if I don't figure out the truth, no one will." Jessica shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "You're just a kid. You shouldn't have to deal with this." "But I am," Liam said. "And I can't let that man get away with it." Jessica pulled him into a tight hug, her tears dampening his shoulder. "I just want you to be safe," she whispered. The next morning, Officer Ramirez called with an update. "We found something," she said. "There were partial fingerprints on the keychain, and they match a man named Kyle Becker. He's Alyssa Green's ex-boyfriend." Liam's heart raced. "That's him. That's the man I saw in the park." Ramirez's tone grew serious. "Kyle has a history of violent behavior, and he was questioned early in the investigation but was later cleared. This changes everything. We're issuing a warrant for his arrest." Liam felt a surge of hope. For the first time, it felt like they were getting closer to the truth. But Ramirez's next words sent a chill down his spine. "Be careful, Liam. If Kyle knows you're involved, he might not stop at breaking into your house. We'll keep an officer stationed nearby, but you need to stay alert." Liam nodded, gripping the phone tightly. "I will. Just don't let him get away." As the day wore on, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was coming. The break-in was a warning, and Kyle Becker wasn't the kind of man to give up easily. That night, Liam sat at his desk, staring at his notebook. The pieces were starting to come together, but there were still too many unanswered questions. He glanced at the sunflower keychain, now sealed in an evidence bag. It had been the key to unlocking the truth, but it had also made him a target. Liam took a deep breath, his resolve hardening. No matter how dangerous it got, he wasn't going to stop until justice was served. The morning after the break-in, the world felt different to Liam Carter. The sunlight streaming through the hotel window seemed colder, the air heavier. For the first time, Liam understood the weight of what he was up against. Kyle Becker, the man with the scar, knew who he was and what he had uncovered. And now, he wasn't just a boy trying to help prove Nathan Hayes' innocence. He was a target, Jessica had barely let Liam out of her sight since the break-in. Over breakfast at the small hotel cafe, she kept glancing toward the door, her anxiety palpable. "Liam," she said, her voice low and urgent, "we can't stay here forever. The police are doing their job. I need you to promise me that you'll let them handle this from now on." Liam nodded, but inside, his resolve was stronger than ever. He couldn't stop, not when they were so close. Later that day, Liam decided to revisit Oak Ridge Park. Officer Ramirez had warned him to stay out of trouble, but Liam felt like the answers he needed were there, hidden in plain sight. He waited until Jessica was on a phone call in the hotel lobby, then grabbed his backpack and slipped out the side door. The bike ride to the park was nerve-wracking. Liam's eyes darted to every passing car, every shadow that moved along the sidewalk. The memory of the man in the hoodie chasing him still haunted him. When he reached the park, it was quieter than usual. The lake reflected the cloudy sky, and only a few people were walking along the paths. Liam headed straight to the spot near the tree where he had found the sunflower keychain. The ground was undisturbed, just as he had left it. But as Liam scanned the area, something caught his eye. A faint tire track leading away from the dirt path toward a wooded area. Liam followed the track, his heart pounding. The path led to a clearing where an old white truck was partially hidden behind some overgrown bushes. The truck's paint was peeling, and the emblem on the side, an interlocked circle with radiating lines, matched the symbol Liam had seen on the man's jacket. His breath quickened. This was it. He glanced around to make sure no one was watching, then approached the truck. The driver's door was unlocked. Liam hesitated, his fingers hovering over the handle. What if Kyle Becker was nearby? What if this was a trap? But curiosity won out. Liam opened the door and climbed inside. The cab was musty and cluttered, filled with empty coffee cups and crumpled fast food wrappers. A clipboard rested on the passenger seat, and tucked beneath it was a small leather-bound notebook. Liam grabbed the notebook and flipped it open. The pages were covered in messy handwriting, listing dates, names, and locations. As he read, his stomach turned. The notebook detailed meetings and transactions that hinted at something far darker than Alyssa's murder, something that sounded like human trafficking. Names were crossed out, and others were circled. One entry stood out. Alyssa Green, got too close. Taken care of. Rachel Daniels, under control. Liam's hands trembled as he stared at the words. Rachel Daniels was Alyssa's best friend, the one who had spoken out so passionately after her disappearance. If this notebook was accurate, Rachel wasn't just a witness. She was a target. Before Liam could process what he had found, a noise outside made him freeze. Footsteps were approaching the truck. Liam quickly shoved the notebook into his backpack and slid out of the truck on the passenger side, keeping low to the ground. He peeked around the corner and saw a man walking toward the truck, tall, broad-shouldered, and wearing a dark hoodie. Kyle Becker. Liam's heart pounded as he crept away, keeping to the shadows. He didn't stop until he was back on his bike, pedaling furiously toward the hotel. When Liam got back, Jessica was waiting for him in the lobby, her face pale with worry. "Where were you?" she demanded. "I had to check something," Liam said, out of breath. Jessica opened her mouth to scold him, but Liam cut her off. "Mom, listen. I found something. Something big." In their hotel room, Liam showed her the notebook and explained everything. Jessica's hands shook as she flipped through the pages. This is evidence," she said, her voice trembling. "We need to show this to the police right now." Liam nodded. "We can call Officer Ramirez. She'll know what to do." That evening, Ramirez arrived at the hotel. Her expression turned grim as Liam explained how he had found the notebook. "Liam," she said, "you're incredibly lucky Kyle didn't catch you. This could have ended very differently." "I had to do it," Liam insisted. "Look at what's in there. It proves Nathan is innocent, and it shows Rachel Daniels might still be in danger." Ramirez studied the notebook, her jaw tightening. "This is more than just evidence for Alyssa's case. If these notes are accurate, we're looking at a criminal operation that goes far beyond what we thought. But you need to understand, Liam, this makes things more dangerous for you, too." Jessica stepped forward, her voice filled with urgency. "What can we do? I can't let him be a target." "We'll move you both to a safe house," Ramirez said, "and we'll start building a case against Kyle Becker and anyone else connected to this operation. Liam felt a mix of relief and fear. The notebook was a breakthrough, but it also confirmed what he had suspected all along. Kyle Becker was willing to do whatever it took to protect his secrets. At the safe house, Liam sat at the kitchen table, the weight of the day pressing down on him. The notebook was gone, now in the hands of the police, but his mind kept returning to the entry about Rachel Daniels. If she was under control, what did that mean? Was she alive? Or had Kyle already silenced her? Liam opened his laptop and searched for Rachel's name. Most of the articles were from months ago, detailing her efforts to organize vigils and protests after Alyssa's disappearance. But her social media accounts had gone silent, and there were no recent updates about her whereabouts. As Liam scrolled through old posts, one caught his attention. It was a photo of Rachel and Alyssa, both smiling at the camera. The caption read, "No matter what it takes, I'll find justice for you." Liam stared at the photo, his chest tightening. Rachel had been determined to uncover the truth. But if she had gotten too close, just like Alyssa, then she might have paid the price. That night, Liam couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, staring out at the darkened street. The safe house was quiet, but every creak of the floorboards made him jump. He thought about Kyle Becker and the other names in the notebook. How many people had been silenced? How many lives had been destroyed? Liam clenched his fists. He had to do more. Rachel might still be out there, and she might be the key to proving Nathan's innocence and bringing Kyle Becker to justice. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Liam made a silent vow. He wasn't going to stop, not until the truth was out, no matter how dangerous it got. The safe house was supposed to feel secure, but for Liam, it felt like a prison. The heavy silence was suffocating, broken only by the occasional footsteps of the officers stationed outside. His mind buzzed with unanswered questions about Rachel Daniels, the notebook, and what Kyle Becker's operation truly involved. Jessica, ever vigilant, stayed close to him. But despite her efforts to reassure him, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. That morning, Officer Ramirez called. "Liam," she said, her tone firm yet gentle. "We're presenting the notebook to the court today. It's not enough to completely overturn the case yet, but it's a start. I've also flagged Rachel Daniels as a missing person of interest, and we're following up on leads." Liam gripped the phone tighter. "I want to be there," he said. "Liam, you've done enough," Ramirez replied. "The courtroom can be hostile, and you've already put yourself in enough danger." "I need to be there," Liam insisted. "Nathan deserves to know that someone believes him, and I need to make sure they listen." Ramirez hesitated. "All right," she finally said, "but you need to stay quiet unless you're called on. Do you understand?" "I promise," Liam said, though his heart raced with anticipation. The courtroom was just as crowded as before, a tense atmosphere hanging over the proceedings. Reporters whispered to each other, their cameras flashing as Liam entered the room with Jessica and Ramirez. Nathan Hayes sat at the defense table, his face pale but alert. His attorney, Peter Rourke, had an expression of cautious optimism as he reviewed the new evidence. Liam's gaze shifted to the prosecution table. The prosecutor, Claire Winters, looked unshaken. Her sharp, confident demeanor exuded an air of control, as if nothing could derail her case. Judge Sylvia Gray entered the courtroom and called the session to order. She adjusted her glasses and turned to Peter Rourke. "Mr. Rourke," she said, her voice stern, "you've indicated that you have new evidence to present. Please proceed." Rourke stood and addressed the court. "Your Honor, this notebook was discovered by Liam Carter, a witness who came forward during the trial. It contains detailed notes about an operation that implicates another suspect in Alyssa Green's murder. This evidence not only raises significant questions about Mr. Hayes' guilt, but also points to a wider conspiracy." He handed the notebook to the bailiff, who brought it to Judge Gray. She flipped through its pages, her expression unreadable. The prosecutor stood, her tone sharp. "Your Honor, with all due respect, this notebook is unverified. It was found by a child who has already disrupted this court once before. How can we trust the authenticity of this evidence?" Liam's face flushed with anger, but he stayed seated, clenching his fists under the table. Peter Rourke responded, his voice steady. "Ms. Winters, While I understand your skepticism, the fingerprints on this notebook match Kyle Becker, Alyssa Green's ex-boyfriend. He was questioned early in this case but released without charges. We believe this evidence warrants further investigation. Winters's eyes narrowed. Kyle Becker was cleared for lack of motive. This notebook doesn't change the fact that Nathan Hayes was seen arguing with Alyssa on the night of her disappearance. Judge Gray held up a hand, silencing the back and forth. Enough. I'll review this evidence and decide how to proceed. For now, we will continue with the testimony scheduled for today. As the trial resumed, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Judge Gray's reaction to the notebook had been guarded, almost too neutral, and the prosecutor's confidence felt unnerving, as if she knew something no one else did. During a break, Liam stepped out into the hallway to clear his head. The cold marble floors and echoing footsteps only heightened his unease. Liam. He turned to see Elsie Wright, Nathan's defense team lawyer, approaching him. Her expression was unreadable, her tone low. Can we talk? Liam hesitated but nodded. Elsie gestured for him to follow her to a quiet corner of the courthouse. I need you to be honest with me, she said. Where did you really find that notebook? Liam frowned. I told you. It was in a truck near the park. Elsie's eyes narrowed. And you're sure it wasn't planted? Something like this showing up out of nowhere could be used to discredit Nathan's defense. It wasn't planted, Liam said firmly. Kyle Becker was at the park that day. I saw him. And the notebook proves he's involved in something much bigger. Elsie studied him for a moment, then sighed. Be careful, Liam. Not everyone in this courthouse wants the truth to come out. When the trial reconvened, the prosecution called a new witness to the stand. Marcus Foley, a private investigator who had been working with the prosecution. Liam froze in his seat. He recognized Marcus as the man who had broken into his house. Mr. Foley, the prosecutor began. Can you confirm that you conducted a thorough investigation into Mr. Hayes' background? Yes, Marcus said, his voice smooth and confident. We found no evidence linking anyone other than Nathan Hayes to Alyssa Green's death. Liam's jaw tightened. He wanted to stand up and shout, to tell the court who Marcus really was. But Ramirez, sitting beside him, placed a firm hand on his shoulder, silently reminding him to stay quiet. The prosecutor continued. And what is your professional opinion of the so-called new evidence presented by the defense? Marcus smirked. It's a distraction. A desperate attempt to create reasonable doubt where there is none. Liam felt a surge of anger. Marcus was lying, and no one in the courtroom seemed to notice. After the session ended for the day, Liam approached Peter Rourke outside the courthouse. Mr. Rourke, he said, his voice shaking, Marcus Foley is lying. He broke into my house. He's part of whatever Kyle Becker is involved in. Rourke's eyes widened. Are you sure? Yes, Liam said. He was looking for the keychain. He knew it would lead to the notebook. Rourke rubbed his temples, his expression grim. If Marcus is involved, this goes deeper than we thought. But without proof, it's your word against his. Liam's heart sank. Proof. He needed more proof. That night, back at the safe house, Liam lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The walls seemed to close in around him as the weight of everything pressed down. He thought of Nathan Hayes, sitting in that courtroom, his freedom slipping away. He thought of Rachel Daniels, missing and possibly in danger. And he thought of Marcus Foley, standing on the witness stand and lying to everyone. Liam sat up, his resolve hardening. He couldn't wait for the adults to figure it out. If he wanted the truth to come out, he'd have to find it himself. The night air was thick with tension as Liam sat on the edge of his bed in the safe house, staring at the notebook Ramirez had taken photos of before submitting it as evidence. The details haunted him. Kyle Becker's name was all over those pages, but what gripped Liam most was the chilling note about Rachel Daniels. Under control? What did that mean? Was she still alive? And if she was, why hadn't she come forward? Jessica, sitting nearby, was on edge. Every creak of the house made her flinch. She'd barely let Liam out of her sight since they arrived. Liam, she said softly, you're barely sleeping, barely eating. I know you feel like you have to solve this, but you're just a kid. Let the police handle it. I can't just sit here, Mom, Liam replied, his voice firm. Nathan's running out of time. and Rachel might be in danger. If I don't do something, who will? Jessica sighed heavily, but she didn't argue further. She knew how stubborn her son could be. The next day, Liam made a decision. While Jessica was busy talking to Ramirez, Liam slipped out of the safe house, determined to retrace his steps and find more answers. His first stop was the park where he'd seen Kyle Becker arguing with the blonde woman months ago. The place seemed ordinary now. Families picnicked on the grass, kids played on the swings, but for Liam, it felt like the epicenter of a dark secret. He walked to the spot near the lake where he'd hidden behind a tree that day. The memory of Kyle's scarred face and the woman's terrified expression came flooding back. Something about the scene had always bothered him, and as he stood there, he realized what it was. The woman, the one he thought might be Rachel, wasn't just scared. She had been yelling something over and over. Liam hadn't been close enough to hear it clearly, but now, replaying it in his mind, he was certain she'd been saying one word: help. As Liam searched the area, his foot brushed against something half buried in the dirt. He crouched down and pulled it free. It was a bracelet, tarnished and broken, but unmistakable. One of the charms was a small sunflower, identical to the keychain he'd found earlier. Liam's chest tightened. This wasn't a coincidence. Rachel Daniels had been here, and she dropped this bracelet during the struggle. Before he could process the discovery, a shadow fell over him. You should have stayed out of this. Liam spun around, his heart leaping into his throat. Standing a few feet away was a man in a black hoodie. His face was obscured, but his voice was cold and unmistakably threatening. Liam instinctively stepped back, clutching the bracelet tightly in his hand. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice trembling. The man didn't answer. He took a step closer, his posture tense and predatory. "You don't know what you're messing with, kid," the man said. "Give me the bracelet." "No," Liam said, his voice shaky but defiant. "I know what this is, and I'm not letting you cover it up." The man let out a low, humorless laugh. "You think you're brave? You're just a stupid kid who doesn't know when to quit." Before Liam could react, the man lunged at him. Liam turned and ran, his legs pumping as fast as they could carry him. His lungs burned, and his heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't dare look back. He could hear the man's heavy footsteps behind him, getting closer with every second. Up ahead, Liam spotted a group of joggers resting on a bench. Summoning every ounce of strength, he screamed, "Help! Someone's chasing me!" The joggers turned, their faces startled. The man chasing Liam skidded to a halt, his hood still obscuring his face. For a moment, he stood there, his body tense, as if deciding whether to keep going. Then, without a word, he turned and sprinted back toward the trees, disappearing into the shadows. Liam collapsed onto the bench, gasping for air. One of the joggers, a woman in her 30s, knelt beside him. "Are you okay? What happened?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. "There was a man," Liam panted. "He was chasing me. He wanted this." He held up the bracelet, his hand trembling. The woman frowned. "We need to call the police." Liam nodded, his breath still coming in ragged gasps. By the time Officer Ramirez arrived, Liam had calmed down enough to explain what had happened. He showed her the bracelet and described the man who had chased him. Ramirez's expression grew grim as she examined the bracelet. "This looks like it belongs to Rachel Daniels," she said. "It matches the description her family gave when she was first reported missing." "So she was here," Liam said. "She was with Kyle Becker the day Alyssa disappeared." "It's starting to look that way," Ramirez agreed. "But we need more than this to prove it." Liam's frustration boiled over. Why isn't this enough? The bracelet, the notebook, everything. It all points to Kyle. Ramirez placed a hand on his shoulder. "Liam, I know you want answers, and we're getting closer. But the law doesn't work on hunches. We need concrete evidence to tie everything together." Liam nodded reluctantly, but deep down, he knew he couldn't stop now. That night, back at the safe house, Liam sat at the kitchen table, staring at the bracelet. The small sunflower charm gleamed under the dim light, a tiny beacon of hope in the midst of the chaos. Jessica sat across from him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "You could have been hurt today," she said, her voice trembling. What if those joggers hadn't been there? What if that man had caught you? I didn't have a choice, Mom, Liam said quietly. I can't stop. Not when we're this close. Jessica sighed, tears welling in her eyes. I'm scared, Liam. I'm scared for you. Liam reached across the table and took her hand. I'm scared too, but I can't let them get away with this. I can't. Jessica nodded, though her fear was still etched into her face. The next morning, Ramirez called with an update. We've traced the bracelet to Rachel Daniels, she said. It was reported missing along with her other belongings. This confirms she was in the park that day. Liam felt a flicker of hope. So what happens now? We're launching a search for Rachel, Ramirez said. If she's alive, she might be able to tell us everything. But Liam, I need you to stay out of this from now on. The closer we get, the more dangerous this becomes. I understand, Liam said, though the words felt hollow. As the call ended, Liam stared out the window, his mind racing. Rachel Daniels was the key to everything. If they found her, they could expose Kyle Becker and the entire operation. But Liam couldn't shake the feeling that finding Rachel wouldn't be easy, and that Kyle wasn't done with him yet. The days that followed were agonizing for Liam. Despite Ramirez's assurance that the police were searching for Rachel Daniels, the waiting was unbearable. The more he thought about the bracelet, the notebook, and the confrontation in the park, the more certain he became that time was running out. If Rachel was alive, she was in grave danger. Jessica, ever watchful, kept close to Liam at the safe house. But even her vigilance couldn't keep him from obsessing over the unanswered questions. He spent hours on his laptop, combing through old news articles, social media posts, and anything he could find about Rachel. One post caught his eye, a photo of Rachel with Alyssa, taken just a few days before Alyssa's disappearance. They were sitting outside a cafe, laughing. The caption read, "No matter what happens, we stick together." Liam stared at the photo for a long time. Rachel had been so vocal in the early days of Alyssa's case, organizing vigils and speaking to reporters. But then, almost overnight, she had vanished. Why? Determined to find answers, Liam dug deeper into Rachel's digital footprint. Her social media accounts had been inactive for months, but one comment under a news article stood out. It was from a user named Hidden Truth 56, and it read, "Rachel knows more than anyone thinks. That's why she's gone." Liam's pulse quickened. Could this be a lead? He clicked on the user's profile, but it was almost empty. The only other activity was a comment on a forum post about missing persons. Sometimes people don't disappear. They're made to. The cryptic comment sent a chill down Liam's spine. Who was Hidden Truth 56, and what did they know about Rachel? That evening, Ramirez called with an update. "We've tracked down a possible lead on Rachel," she said. A neighbor reported seeing her leave her apartment in a hurry the night Alyssa's body was found. She hasn't been seen since. "Do you think she's alive?" Liam asked. "We're hopeful," Ramirez replied. "But there's more. We've linked the truck you found to Kyle Becker's family business. It's registered under a shell company he owns. That gives us more leverage to bring him in for questioning." Liam felt a surge of hope. "So you're getting closer?" "We are," Ramirez said. "But Liam, I need you to promise me something. Stay out of this. The more involved you get, the more dangerous this becomes." Liam hesitated. "I promise," he said, though he knew he couldn't keep that promise. The next morning, Liam couldn't sit still. Every fiber of his being told him to do something. He scrolled through Rachel's old social media posts again, searching for anything he might have missed. One post from months ago caught his attention. It was a photo of Rachel standing in front of a remote cabin with the caption, "Sometimes you need to get away from it all." Liam recognized the background. It was near a hiking trail on the outskirts of town. If Rachel had gone into hiding, this cabin might be where she was. Liam knew he couldn't tell his mom or Ramirez. They would never let him go. So he packed a small bag, grabbed his bike, and set out for the trail. The ride was long and grueling. The dirt road leading to the cabin was overgrown with weeds, and the surrounding forest felt eerily quiet. As Liam approached the cabin, his heart pounded in his chest. The cabin looked abandoned. The windows were boarded up, and the porch was covered in leaves and debris. But as Liam stepped closer, he noticed faint footprints in the dirt, leading to the door. Liam knocked softly. "Hello? Is anyone here?" There was no response. He tried the door, and to his surprise, it creaked open. The interior was dimly lit, with the faint smell of mildew in the air. A table in the corner was covered in papers and photographs. Liam stepped closer and froze. The photos were of Alyssa and Rachel. Some showed them together, smiling and happy. Others were candid shots, as if taken without their knowledge. On the table was a map with several locations circled in red. One of them was the park where Alyssa had disappeared. Suddenly, a noise behind him made Liam spin around. A woman stood in the doorway, her blonde hair disheveled and her eyes wide with fear. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Are you Rachel Daniels?" Liam asked, his voice shaking. The woman's expression hardened. "Who sent you?" "No one sent me," Liam said quickly. "I've been trying to prove Nathan Hayes is innocent, and I think you're the only one who can help." Rachel stared at him for a long moment, then sighed and closed the door behind her. Over the next hour, Rachel told Liam everything. She had been Alyssa's best friend, but she had also been working with her to expose Kyle Becker's operation. Alyssa had stumbled onto evidence of human trafficking linked to Kyle's business, and Rachel had been helping her gather proof. "When Alyssa disappeared," Rachel said, her voice trembling, "I knew it was Kyle. He threatened her so many times, told her to stay out of his business. When they found her body, I knew I was next. So I ran." "Why didn't you go to the police?" Liam asked. Rachel shook her head. "Kyle has connections everywhere. He has people on his payroll, people who can make evidence disappear, make witnesses vanish. I didn't know who to trust." Liam thought of Marcus Foley and his false testimony. Rachel was right. "Rachel," Liam said, "I found a notebook in Kyle's truck. It has everything, dates, names, even notes about Alyssa and you. The police have it now. You can come back and testify. They'll protect you." Rachel hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. "If I testify, Kyle will come after me. He'll come after anyone who helps me." Liam met her gaze. "Then we have to stop him before he can." As Rachel packed her belongings, Liam heard the faint sound of an engine outside. He peeked through the window and saw a black SUV pulling up the dirt road. "Someone's coming," he whispered. Rachel froze. "It's them. Kyle's people. They've been watching me." Panic surged through Liam. "We have to go. Now." Rachel grabbed her bag, and they slipped out the back door, disappearing into the forest. The sound of footsteps and voices grew louder as they ran, the trees blurring around them. Liam's heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't dare look back. They finally emerged onto a side road, where Rachel flagged down a passing car. The driver, a middle-aged man, hesitated but agreed to take them into town after Rachel pleaded with him. As the car sped away, Liam glanced out the back window. The black SUV was parked on the side of the dirt road, its occupants scanning the forest. For the first time, Liam felt the weight of how dangerous this had become. But as he looked at Rachel, he knew they couldn't stop now. By the time they reached the police station, Rachel was trembling but resolute. Ramirez met them at the door, her eyes widening in surprise. "Rachel Daniels," she said, "we've been looking for you." "I'm ready to talk," Rachel said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "But you have to promise me one thing. Kyle Becker and his people can't get to me." "You'll be safe," Ramirez assured her. Liam watched as Rachel was led inside, a flicker of hope igniting in his chest. They were one step closer to the truth. Rachel Daniels' testimony was everything Officer Ramirez and her team had hoped for. She confirmed what the notebook. Liam spent the morning pacing the small living room of the safe house, the walls closing in on him as he anxiously awaited news from Ramirez. She and her team were searching the storage facility linked to Kyle Becker, and Liam couldn't shake the feeling that this was the turning point. If they found what they were looking for, it would be over. But if they didn't, Jessica sat nearby, quietly scrolling through her phone. She glanced up and gave Liam a weak smile. "You're going to wear a hole in the floor if you keep that up." Liam tried to smile back but couldn't. "What if they don't find anything?" he asked. "What if it's just another dead end?" Jessica set her phone down and pulled him into a hug. "Ramirez is good at what she does. If there's something there, she'll find it." Her words were meant to reassure him, but Liam could still feel the gnawing doubt in his chest. Hours later, Ramirez called. Her tone was serious, but laced with a hint of triumph. "We found something, Liam," she said. The storage unit was filled with evidence, documents, photos, even videos, linking Kyle Becker to a trafficking ring. "This is the proof we've been looking for." Liam's heart raced. What about Alyssa? And Rachel? "There were photos of Alyssa and Rachel in the files," Ramirez said grimly. "It confirms everything Rachel told us. Kyle and his associates were trying to silence Alyssa because she was gathering evidence against them, and Rachel was next on their list. What happens now?" Liam asked. "We've issued an arrest warrant for Kyle," Ramirez said. "It's only a matter of time before we bring him in. But Liam, you need to stay vigilant. Desperate people do desperate things." That night, Liam felt a sense of relief for the first time in weeks. The evidence they found at the storage facility was damning, and Ramirez assured him that Kyle wouldn't be able to escape justice this time. But his relief was short-lived. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his phone buzzed with a new email. The sender was unknown, and the subject line sent a chill down his spine. "You don't know the whole story." Liam hesitated before opening the email. The message was short but terrifying. "You think you're safe, but you're wrong. Stop now, or the people you love will pay the price." Attached to the email was a photo of Jessica, taken through the window of the safe house. Liam's breath caught in his throat as he stared at the photo. His mom had been standing by the kitchen counter, completely unaware that someone was watching. He bolted out of bed and ran to Jessica's room, shaking her awake. "Mom," he said, his voice trembling, "someone's watching us." Jessica sat up, her eyes wide with alarm. "What do you mean?" Liam showed her the email and the photo. Jessica's face went pale as she read the message. "Oh my God," she whispered. "How did they find us?" Liam's voice shook. "I don't know, but we need to call Ramirez." Jessica nodded and grabbed her phone, dialing Ramirez's number. Within minutes, Ramirez and a team of officers were at the safe house, assessing the situation. "This is a direct threat," Ramirez said, her jaw tight. "Whoever sent this wants to scare you into silence. But we're not going to let that happen." "What do we do?" Jessica asked, her voice wavering. "We're moving you both to a secure location," Ramirez said. "And we're doubling our efforts to track down Kyle. He's losing control, and that makes him dangerous." The following day, Ramirez called with another update. "Kyle Becker is on the run," she said. "We raided his home this morning, but he was already gone. We're tracking his movements, but he knows we're closing in." "Do you think he sent the email?" Liam asked. "It's likely," Ramirez said, "but we're also looking into his associates. He has a network of people who would do anything to protect him." Liam felt a wave of frustration. They were so close, but it still wasn't over. That afternoon, Ramirez called again with urgent news. "We've located Kyle," she said. "He's holed up in a remote cabin just outside town. We're moving in now, but I need you and your mom to stay where you are." Liam's heart raced. What if he escapes again? "He won't," Ramirez said firmly. "We have the area surrounded." At the cabin, Ramirez and her team approached cautiously, their weapons drawn. The area was eerily quiet, the only sound the crunch of leaves underfoot. "Becker," Ramirez shouted. "We know you're in there. Come out with your hands up." For a moment, there was no response. Then, the cabin door creaked open, and Kyle Becker stepped outside. His hands were raised, but his expression was defiant. "You think this is over," he said, his voice cold. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." "We'll see about that," Ramirez said as two officers cuffed him and led him away. Back at the safe house, Liam and Jessica watched the news as footage of Kyle's arrest played on the screen. Jessica hugged Liam tightly, tears streaming down her face. "It's over," she whispered. "It's finally over." But Liam wasn't so sure. Kyle's words echoed in his mind. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." Later that night, Ramirez visited the safe house to debrief them. "Kyle is in custody," she said, "and with the evidence we've gathered, there's no way he's walking free. But we're still working to dismantle his network. It's going to take time." "What about the people who've been hurt?" Liam asked. "Alyssa's family, Rachel, Everyone he threatened? We're doing everything we can to bring them justice, Ramirez said. And Liam, that includes you. What you did took incredible bravery. You helped us bring down a dangerous man. Liam nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to uncover. The email, the photo of his mom. Someone out there was still watching. As the night wore on, Liam sat by the window, staring out at the darkened street. The house was quiet, but the weight of everything they'd been through hung heavy in the air. Liam opened his notebook and flipped to a blank page. He wrote down everything that had happened, every detail, every clue. He didn't want to forget, because even though Kyle Becker was behind bars, Liam knew the fight for justice wasn't over yet. The courthouse was packed, the air buzzing with tension and anticipation. Liam sat in the gallery beside Jessica, his fingers gripping the edge of the bench. Today was the day Kyle Becker would finally face justice. After weeks of investigation, testimonies, and mounting evidence, the case against Kyle had become airtight. But Liam couldn't shake the gnawing sense of unease that had lingered since Kyle's arrest. The email, the threats, and the cryptic words Kyle had spoken during his capture still haunted him. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Jessica placed a comforting hand on Liam's shoulder. It's going to be okay, she whispered. Liam nodded but didn't reply. The trial began with the prosecutor laying out the charges against Kyle: human trafficking, conspiracy, and the murder of Alyssa Green. Photos, documents, and the contents of the notebook Liam had found were presented as evidence, painting a damning picture of Kyle's criminal enterprise. Rachel Daniels was the star witness. She sat on the stand, her hands trembling slightly as she recounted the events leading up to Alyssa's disappearance. Alyssa discovered what Kyle was doing, Rachel said, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. She tried to gather proof, but Kyle found out. He threatened her, told her to stop digging. When she refused, he killed her. Her voice broke, and she wiped away a tear. And then he came after me. I've been running ever since. The courtroom fell silent, the weight of her testimony sinking in. When the defense called Kyle to the stand, he showed no remorse. Instead, he smirked as he spoke, his words dripping with defiance. I didn't kill Alyssa Green, he said. And as for the rest of this, you have no proof I was in charge of anything. You're just looking for someone to blame. The prosecutor fired back, presenting the evidence collected from the storage facility: contracts, receipts, and video footage that linked Kyle to the trafficking ring. As each piece of evidence was revealed, Kyle's smirk faded. During a recess, Liam and Jessica sat outside the courtroom, sipping water and trying to calm their nerves. Officer Ramirez joined them, her expression guarded. You're doing great, Ramirez said to Liam. We couldn't have gotten this far without you. Liam frowned. But why does it still feel like something's wrong? Ramirez hesitated. Because Kyle isn't the only one involved. We've dismantled part of his network, but there are still people out there who might try to keep this operation alive. That's why we need to stay vigilant. Jessica squeezed Liam's hand. You've done your part, Liam. Now it's up to the system to do the rest. The trial resumed, and the prosecutor made her closing arguments. She painted Kyle as a manipulative and dangerous man who would do anything to protect his criminal empire. He silenced Alyssa Green because she stood in his way, the prosecutor said, her voice ringing through the courtroom. And he would have done the same to Rachel Daniels and others if he hadn't been stopped. This man is a threat to society, and he must be held accountable. The defense attorney tried to sow doubt, claiming that the evidence was circumstantial and that Kyle was being scapegoated. But it was clear that the jury wasn't buying it. As the jury deliberated, Liam sat in the hallway with Jessica and Ramirez. The wait felt endless, each passing minute stretching into an eternity. Finally, the courtroom doors opened, and the bailiff announced that the jury had reached a verdict. Liam's heart pounded as the foreman stood and read the verdict.